Prairie Yard and Garden is a production of the University of Minnesota Morris in cooperation with Pioneer Public Television. Closed captioning is provided by Mark and Margaret Yakel-Julien in honor of Shalom Hill Farm, a nonprofit rural education retreat center in a beautiful prairie setting near Windham in southwestern Minnesota. Shalom Hill Farm, shalomhill.org.
Every year, gardeners look forward to learning about new vegetable and flower varieties that will be marketed with the All-America Selections designation. Join me on Prairie Yard and Garden as we learn more about these types of gardens. All-America Selections designation has won the public's trust that those varieties will do well throughout North America. Individuals can view these new varieties in All-America Selections display gardens scattered in 200 locations across the country. Joining me today is Steve Poppe, horticulture researcher at Morris, Minnesota. Well, Steve, welcome to the show.
Yes, Larry.
And tell me a little bit about these gardens here in west central Minnesota.
Well, part of the effort that we have here at our horticultural display gardens is that we are an all-American selections display garden, where we provide to the general public the past 5 years of superior performers that are found superior, with AAS judges.
So a beginning gardener could feel very successful if they selected all-America varieties.
Yes, right. And another thing I should say about AAS is that they became an organization back in the early 1930s, and they were the first of its kind to trial from seed flowers and vegetables. So they've been around a very, very long time, and they still exist, and some of the major plant breeding companies really do rely on AAS to showcase some of their new varieties of flowers.
Well, in this whole process, how do we find these new varieties?
Of course, there's always the website. If you go to AAS, you can look at those past 5 years of winners. But in a lot of seed catalogs, when you're looking for your favorite vegetable or your favorite flower, you will find that insignia next to some of those superior performers. The AAS insignia is easily found in some of the home garden catalogs. That's where you first could look.
We have display gardens, but this garden here is going to become a trial garden?
Yes.
Give me some background on that.
We are very honored and very privileged that coming up this next year in 2012, we will become an AAS trial grounds where we'll be trialing flowers. It'll be the only of its kind in the state of Minnesota. I will be judging those flowers. A plant company will introduce this particular variety to AAS. They want it trialed. That particular flower will not have a name on it, okay? And we will compare it to probably 2 or 3 other comparison varieties that have similar characteristics to that one that they want to trial. And we'll be planting our flowers in rows again because we have to, there's an extensive list of trial data that we need to look at to look at these new flowers that they're hoping to introduce.
How many new varieties would you expect to trial this first year?
There could be anywhere from probably 15 to 30, just depending on how many the plant breeding companies want to trial each year. And then again, you'll need 2 or 3 comparison varieties. So, oh gosh, anywhere from 30 to 90, somewhere in that area we'll be looking at each year.
In this case, are you going to have to start all of those from seed?
Yes, we are. So we need to incorporate some more greenhouse space, and for this year, they will all be grown from seed. And AAS is seriously looking at also trialing vegetative flowers too, because the vegetative market is probably overtaken probably 50% of the annual flower market. Those are flowers that are produced from cuttings. The AAS has been strictly from seed.
Well, Steve, you mentioned that there was 400 different varieties growing here. Can we take a look at some of those great performers?
Yes, we can. We can look at some of the AAS top performers, and as part of our research, we've come up with a top 10, and we can probably talk about some of those and see how they look right now. Over here, Larry, we have one of this year's new superior performance for AAS called Salvia Summer Jewels Red.
That is beautiful looking.
It really is. It's doing quite well here yet for, early September. But it's a salvia that really is kind of unusual, isn't it? I mean, have you seen this before?
No, I can't say that I have.
Yeah, because I really, really like the nice clean foliage and the way the flowers are open all the way up that whole flower spike. So it's a new appearance in a salvia, and it is a proven performer, and in 2011 it is one of the top performers for AAS.
What about that Petunia?
That Petunia was a winner about 4 or 5 years ago, called Opera Supreme Pink Morn, and it, as you can see, it's just outstanding. It is grown from seed. It just constantly is spreading across that area. As you can see, you don't see any dead blooms on there right now, do you, Larry?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very clean.
Yes, and that's what it has a real plus. It grows so vigorously and produces so much clean foliage and new flowers continuously, it covers up the dead, So that's why in early September, a Petunia looking like that is a top performer.
Now, would you need to fertilize this on a pretty regular basis in the summer to maintain that growth and flowering characteristic?
Well, I would say most of that should be done prior to planting. Here in our gardens, we always make sure we amend the soil, about every 3 years or so. We're very, very fortunate here at the West Central Research and Outreach Center to have extremely fertile soil. But these flowers are hit with a water-soluble fertilizer, a foliar fertilizer, probably about 3-4 times during the year, just to give them a little extra kick.
Okay. Well, that's important to know, that if a consumer at home wants to maintain that garden all the way into September, you probably got to feed it a couple times during the summer.
Right. Off that too, if you're growing that particular flower or plant in a container or a basket, most times that is going to be grown in a soilless mix, okay? So there aren't a whole lot of nutrients in there unless the greenhouse or whatever put a slow release fertilizer in there. So I would recommend, you need to feed them weekly, and they'll have proven performance if you keep feeding them with a water-soluble fertilizer on a weekly basis.
Okay, good advice. What do we got over here?
Well, there's another one that came into our top 10 performers. It's a Vinca, Pacifica, Burgundy Halo. Just a unique Vinca. Vinca are not like Petunias. They do not bloom real early, okay? They come on about, say, end of June, midsummer, and they just showcase their flowers in the late summer. Vinca, again, I always like a flower that has very clean foliage. And these new varieties, they used to have some disease problems with them. And they've really come a long ways in being disease resistant. And again, having that very clean green foliage.
Well, the summer of 2011 has been a very good test. My understanding, you've had about an inch of rain here on a weekly basis and high humidity all summer.
Right.
Ideal conditions for funguses.
Oh, yes. And we've had some real dogs here this year, too, Not all the flowers have had superior performance, but it is amazing when you're evaluating these flowers. And I'm making my final evaluation this week before we put our final data together. If a flower is still looking good at this time of year, it has superior performance. Well, Larry, here's a plant over in our hardy shrub rose garden I'd like to talk about. As you can see, it's fitting very nicely in this statue in the rose garden. And it's called Begonia gold dust. It was just recently introduced. As you can see, it's just full of small yellow flowers. And we also have this growing in a bed too, and it's just doing just as well in a garden bed. You see it's doing nice in this pot. It also has this plus that it's deer resistant, I guess, you know, because we've tried to go plot plants in this pot before and they just get eaten by deer. It's just at the right level.
Sure, sure.
But a real nice plant, as you can see. We've seen it in some of their literature and whatever else. It just continues all season long with these small, pretty white flowers.
Do you need to do any trimming on this to keep it in shape, or is this its natural form?
This is its natural form. So,
low maintenance.
Low maintenance. And there are probably about 3 plants in the small pot, so it really filled this up nice.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
When we do our plants in pots, we don't use a little deep recession in there so it fills up with water. We're always concerned about rot. So it gets very little water. So it is actually drought tolerant too. Again, one of our top 10 performers for 2011 here at our horticultural display garden.
Well, let's go look at a couple more.
Sure. Well, Larry, I'd like to show you another top performer in one of our display areas.
Wow, this is stunning.
Isn't this unbelievable? This is a Coleus, a sun-tolerant Coleus, and it is a vegetative plant. It has not been started from seed, so home gardeners need to look for these in their garden center. And
Is it going to be under the bedding plant area?
Yes, it will. Yeah, it is called Coleus Wasabi, and just can you believe all this incredible growth in one summer? And as you can see, I mean, just unbelievable plant, the background of some of these ornamental grasses.
How many plants we got in this massive thing?
We have 16 plants within this mass right here.
Looks like every one of them did very well.
Well, right.
Exceptional.
And I always worry about this type of plant growing this much and creating that much succulent growth that you get a wind and it might just knock it over. It's lodging. But as you can see, I mean, we have had wind this summer and we've had some storms, but it's still standing. So it again is one of our top 10 performers for this year.
Well, you put that out in your garden, your neighbors are all going to be turning their chairs towards it.
Oh yes, you bet.
Wow.
It's attractive, and
very.
I think it even looks better now than when I looked at it 3 weeks ago when I first rated it as a top 10 performer. So it is doing outstanding.
And what, we're about 3 feet, maybe 3.5 feet tall?
I would say 3 to 3.5 feet tall, yeah. So if you need a plant as a nice background in full sun, this should do the trick. And you know, with Coleus too, sometimes you get a little bit of flower on here, but as you can see, this Coleus, very few flowers, you know.
Exactly.
You're growing the plant for its foliage, not for its flowers.
Well, and this late in the season, maybe a few flowers is not all bad, but
right,
very acceptable. And then put it in front of this beautiful ornamental grass.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of plants that would do nice contrast with this. You can mix and match it with many different colors.
I wonder, this would fit kind of nice in front of some of the conifers.
Yes, that'd be really attractive in front of some green conifers, right. Well, Larry, we're over at our hanging basket structure. This is our shade garden where we kind of showcase all our shady flowers from begonias to impatiens, coleus, whatnot. So there's quite a large display here of shade-loving flowers.
And they're all doing well.
They really are. I mean, they love moisture, you know, those impatiens and whatnot. So they are really showcasing right now.
Well, what about this wonderful specimen?
This is a new begonia, and this was one of our top 10 performers. Million Kisses Romance is the particular variety name. As you can see, just incredible. Just filled out this whole 12-inch basket hanging here. So, and it's been doing this all season long. As you can see here, we're in early September. It's still putting out lots of flower. And the thing with begonias too, you know, I was talking about coleus and the wind. These things can really normally get beat up. But as you can see, there's very few blossoms laying on the ground here or whatever from wind and rain and whatnot. So it is truly a top performer.
My home where I get a lot of wind, but have hanging baskets, and I would love to try that.
Yeah, you should. That's always part of the criteria that we look at, you know. how they withstand a wind or a rainstorm. I'll come out here and I'll look at our flowers after a heavy rainstorm and just see how are they looking, you know, and how they stand up and how they recover is also, you know, part of our comments that we write into our data with our flower trial.
Well, and that's such a pretty reddish orange color to that flower. It's going to be very distinctive in the right background.
Oh, you're going to see it. You're going to see it on anybody's front porch or whatever.
And late into the evening versus the little darker purples that kind of fade with the dark. This will still stand out.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure, but, you know, begonias, some people bring them into the house in the wintertime, you know, and they don't do so bad. So it'll be interesting to see how this might, you know, if we bring it in and we try and overwinter it, how it does even as a so-called houseplant.
Yeah, good, good. Let's go look at another one.
Sure. Here we have just an unbelievable zinnia. And this zinnia was started from seed, called Zinnia UpTown Orange Blossom. It truly has been fantastic. It's one of our top 10 performers for this year.
Well, I like that color, and zinnias without any disease problems in September.
Right, right. That is a plus, you know. Just look at that. Again, I always talk about nice, clean green foliage. And as you can see, I mean, there are a few areas here that are starting to go down, but I mean, here we are in September and it's still clean. And zinnias are kind of noted for going down in the late summer with some disease. But
right.
Here's a variety started from seed that is still doing quite nice.
I have a question. I'd like to plant a new tree. What should I be aware of before planting?
One of the issues is, particularly with container-grown trees and balled burlap trees, is these trees are grown in the nursery situation way too deep in the soil. What we want to see is these trees eventually start to form what we call a root flare, and a lot of times that root flare is way too deep in the ground. So the issue is that we had it in the pot at this depth, and we want to plant it at this depth here where that stem girdle or the root flare is going to be established. We want that root flare at final grade when the tree is getting established.
Ask the Arboretum Experts has been brought to you by the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum in Chanhassen, dedicated to enriching lives through the appreciation and knowledge of plants.
Well, Larry, I'd like to talk about another plant that does like a little bit of shade. Impatiens we were talking about earlier, but here's a top 10 performer called Impatiens Patchwork Lavender. And as you can see, it truly has numerous flowers in this shade-loving plant.
And actually, this location probably gets a fair amount of sun.
Yes, it does. It does get late afternoon hot sun. And a lot of these new Impatiens are becoming more tolerant of more sun as the breeders, you know, continue to work with those plants.
Well, what kind of requirements does an impatient need?
Well, it does need a little bit more moisture, and growing in usually when you're growing in a shady location, you're growing under trees, okay? So the roots of the trees normally suck the nutrients and the soil moisture out of the plant.
A little more competitive than the plant.
Yes, it is, right, right. So, of course, there is irrigation that is for this plant. It's normally irrigated with the rest of the garden, but you always got to watch these plants when they're first transplanted. They do suffer a little bit, where other plants that are not tolerant of these conditions, they just need a little bit more tender, loving care from the start. Just watch them, baby them a little bit from the beginning.
Okay, and once they're going, they're
yeah, they are. As you can see, again, we talked about there are 16 plants in this area, and it has just completely filled up that whole area.
Well, give me the background on how you get these all started. You've got a little greenhouse, and
it's not little anymore. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
What's that process, and how the steps you take to get them out here to look this good?
Sure. Well, us as horticulturists, winter is not very long. It just doesn't give us enough time to prepare for the new year. myself and our coworkers, we've got about December and January. That's our winter. And then you're already starting plants in February. So the plants that are started from seed, some of those early things such as begonias, you know, delphiniums, whatnot, they're started from seed. We do have a lab where we grow them under fluorescent lights, and we use a heat mat to help us attain that right germination temperature for those seedlings that are started from seed. And then that helps save us on some heat, so we don't have to put them in the greenhouse right away. And say about mid-February or so, then they're ready to transplant. Then we move into the greenhouse where we have to turn on the heat and whatever else. And then they're transplanted, okay, into a mixture that still has some of that wonderful West Central black dirt in it.
Oh, really?
Yes, right. Not a lot of commercial producers use black dirt anymore. We use it, we sterilize it, it's part of our soil mix that when we transplant our flowers in, it just makes for a more superior product, we think.
So are these being transplanted into what, little 4-inch pots?
It just depends what particular plant. It might be a smaller pot, or it might be, you know, like geraniums, they'll go into a 3.5 or 4-inch directly after you transplant them. So it just depends on the plant, what size container they go into. We go from there. They all, again, have different requirements from there on. The moisture situation, the heat, whatever else. When you have 450 different varieties of flowers, they all have their issues and their requirements. So it's constant. I mean, my coworker Tom, that's a very, very large part of his job is in February, March, and April, and into May, growing those plants in the greenhouse.
And then they get transplanted out here, or you're never in a rush to get them out here, are you?
Well, not necessarily. When in West Central Minnesota, when I kind of go by the frost date is May 25th, we try and work on either side of that to plant these flowers out in the garden as transplants. We don't want to rush it. I don't have a big enough blanket to cover 14,000 annual flowers, so we make sure we're not going to have a frost. But what we do with our soil, when they're planted into a bed, we normally work that ground a couple times in the spring, you know, 2 times, you know, about maybe a week or 2 apart. And we get them all prepped. We do actually put down some starter fertilizer, such as a 10-10-10. We incorporate into the bed just to get them going. Again, as I mentioned before, we have extremely good fertile soil conditions here. They're in good ground. And then we use a herbicide, a granular herbicide called Surfland. And we sprinkle that right over the top of the plants and incorporate it with irrigation, and that helps us to some extent with our weed problem. But you still have to use a hoe in your hand and whatever else to weed out the weeds. But the granular herbicide does assist us with the weeds.
Well, it looks good and certainly very weed-free, and
well,
would be a major job.
Oh yes, yes, and we're very fortunate at this horticulture garden that we have 30+ volunteers, Larry, that help us with these particular gardens. They are truly a wonderful group, and they take ownership in these specific gardens and help us throughout the whole year. When we're transplanting these flowers in the greenhouse, we could not do it without our volunteers. We don't have to hire any labor anymore to help us transplant those flowers in the greenhouse. There is a waiting list of volunteers that would love to come in the greenhouse in February and March and help us transplant.
I understand that it's cheaper than flying to Mexico.
There you go, right.
Because the greenhouse is 80 degrees, I bet.
That's right, yeah, it's really comfortable. Well, Larry, I've got another great top performer to share with you, this Salvia that's growing right here. Wow,
it looks wonderful.
Yeah.
Blue.
Yeah. This is Salvia farinacea in that particular family. The common salvia grows much shorter. You commonly see it as a red flower, but here, this particular plant, again, one of our top 10 performers, Salvia evolution. And again, I can't say enough about foliage and how nice that green foliage looks at this time in early September. It's a flower that doesn't just, outstanding right away. It comes on a little later, but here it is in the late summer, and it's still looking fairly nice.
So is this a cousin to it?
It is. That one is called Evolution, and this one is called Evolution White. Now, this white is nice, and it's probably done by the same plant breeders, a little different color, but it seems to be not as nice. I mean, it's sure making a nice contrast with this plant, but it's not quite as vigorous, not quite as tall, and you see some, I mean, when I was rating this, it's got some holes in it. It's got some openings. So not quite as nice as the Evolution or the blue.
Now, does this have any special cultural needs?
Really doesn't. No, it doesn't need any real special care. Again, I've talked about, you know, with wind and rain and whatnot, I worry with this particular type of plant. It becomes maybe quite brittle, but as you can see right here, it's all standing up straight, and it's doing quite well in this location.
Well, and certainly it's on the edge of the garden, exposed to some wind, and it looks like it's stood the test of time.
Right, right. It really has. And if this ornamental grass, which is an annual grass, this pennisedum, which is just kind of draping over the top of it, really makes for a nice combination plant in our horticulture display garden.
Well, Steve, we've seen a number of wonderful flowers that have held up through the season, and great display garden. Can the public come and look at this?
Yes, they can. We are open all season long, all growing season, from dawn to dusk. No admission fee, whatnot. Just, you know, come to the garden and take a look at all these beautiful flowers. There are brochures located throughout the garden that will share with you some of the information about these flowers and anything else you would like to know about horticulture, from water gardens to ornamental grasses to chrysanthemums and whatnot. But we try very, very hard to make sure all our plants are properly labeled, okay? They will give you the common name and the variety name. So when you find one that you really, really like, mark it down. You know, you can either grow it from seed, or else you can check with your garden center the next year to find those particular varieties.
And how do we find this garden?
Well, you can, it's located in the west central part of Minnesota in Morris. If you're familiar with the University of Morris campus, which is a landmark in our community, we are located 1 mile east of the University of Minnesota Morris campus on Highway 329.
I think just tell people to follow the wind generators.
There you go. The wind turbines are definitely a landmark at our experiment station, and just look for those and you'll find our garden.
Okay, well, thank you, Steve. It's been a wonderful afternoon talking about some of the great new varieties that are on the market.
Well, I'm glad I've had the experience to share with you some of our top performers, and for the gardening public to look for those particular varieties next year.
Closed captioning is provided by Mark and Margaret Yackel-Julien in honor of Shalom Hill Farm, a nonprofit rural education retreat center in a beautiful prairie setting near Windham in southwestern Minnesota. Shalom Hill Farm, shalomhill.org.